Welcome to AIM TV, week 19, episode 89. We are joined by some rockstar mentors from our We Imagine special today. We're on a panel discussion today. It's going to be great. I'm Kalani Ripley, and I go to Miami State High School. I'm getting laughed at in the background. That's okay, though. So I think what I imagine from our panel today is that it helps us carry on in our Thinkers panel what we want to be a fairer world in the future, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. I hope we get something out of today. And I think what I believe as we imagine is we can imagine a fairer future for everyone in this world. And I really hope that that's something that we can come up with today, even if it's just a small aspect of it. Now over to you, Jack.
Kalani, what's give me one tangible thing 10 years from now, when you say fairer world, like that's a pretty big concept to think about. What's one thing that you'd like to see change in 10 years' time?
I think personally, I'm a big advocate of just communicating to people, just talking to people. So if we're able to have serious and deeper conversations with people that we may not even know, especially I'm a leader at my school, and I think being able to have those conversations that are a bit more uncomfortable, and people being, comfortable while being uncomfortable, to have those conversations is something that I hope that in 10 years' time, through just educating people that it's okay to have those conversations, would be something that I think would be epic.
Yeah, really important as well. I studied media and communications or journalism at uni, and it was Google had just started. We were Facebook was just being scratched out as an idea. Newspapers were still very much relevant. People would watch the nightly news on television. We hadn't seen the proliferation of communication through laptops. We hadn't seen a smartphone yet. And one of the things that we have, where we're in this group of reorganizing at the moment, is where do we go for complex conversation? What are the trusted sources? And how do you make sense of complexity? I think it's a really important critical role to work out what the fourth estate looks like in the 21st century. We've got a really cool panel of people gathering today, and what we're kicking around the idea is the world that we will imagine together in the next decade. This is our 10th year of creating a hoodie with AIM, and the campaign we're running this year is We Imagine. And Our crew at the warehouse in Marrickville in Sydney, Australia, have now been completely taken over by AIM hoodies. So we're reworking an old hoodie, which we've reclaimed so we can make it as sustainable as possible. We've got stories and artworks of kids from the 3 continents that we're working on. And we've got the vision of some of the things we imagine, including zero waste houses and education being opened up. So we don't have kids outside the margins, and we change the paradigm of thinking and really turbocharge that imaginative framework and a few other things on our wish list. So it's cool to see the guys working really hard and all the crew working hard at our factory in Sydney. And they said yesterday they think it could be the biggest single day of hoodie production in any sort of clothing in Australian history. So I think that's cool if it was just a hoodie, but this is more than a hoodie. This is a device about people coming together saying they want to create change. I think it's a form of currency that when we say we want to create a fairer world, we put our feet forward and we say, this is what we're going to do. And this hoodie becomes our superhero cape or our uniform to be able to do that. So to think that there's thousands upon thousands of people in Australia and around the world that are donning this sweatshirt to say, hey, I'm going to stand up for a fairer world, and I'm going to stand up for a world that we can imagine together is really inspiring for me. So check out a quick video on what we're doing with the campaign, and then we'll meet our panel. Okay, the big question I want to ask the audience, and what I'd love to try and crack today, what is the highest level of thinking you have ever reached? What is higher order thinking? What does higher education mean? And what teacher has taken you there? What experience in life has taken you there? And maybe if you were a teacher yourself, when have you grappled with the highest possible concept that you've ever worked on? And when have you been able to bring it to life for the students that you're working with? So we're about to jump into our Thinkers panel intro, and then Kalani, I'm coming to you for that answer to that question, and let's see the comments coming through on the chat line, and then we'll meet our panel.
If you don't want to work, don't bother dreaming.
Shame is just nothing.
All of us are dealt different cards, and those cards can be awful, but it's what you do. You are responsible for your reaction.
Kalani, what do you think is the most complex thought you've ever been able to make sense of in your mind, the highest level of thinking you've been able to get to?
Look, not going to lie, calculus is definitely one of them. And there's a reason I dropped that subject, because I definitely could not have done that for a long period of time. But I think just a lot of the things that you learn at school, especially in math for me, is really hard. But I don't know, I've got so much to learn. So I think I'll definitely find out at the end of this panel what some of it is, because I can't really put my head around what that would be.
Dr. Meredith Henderson, thank you for joining us from North Carolina to be a part of this experience today. Can you tell us a little bit, very quickly, about the work you do, and then let's jump into this big question: what is higher thinking? What is higher order thinking? And have you had a moment when you've been able to levitate and get your mind into a spot where you're like, wow, I think I worked something out. Maybe I touched, the clouds or the stars of wisdom. And what was that thought or that idea that you feel like you've got a sense of the complexity around it?
Wow, that is an inspiring question to ask. I'm with the organization called Go Global NC, and one of the things that we do is design and manage programs that build capacity for leaders, educators, students, community leaders around intercultural issues. And I think that's one of the things that for me is one of those higher order issues that you want to be thinking about is how can you really relate to people around the world, people from different cultures, people who are just different from you, whether they're older than you, younger than you, and understanding that you can learn from people all over the world and people who are different from you. But you have to be able to access that ability to to understand them and talk to them and really get that kind of cultural connection with them.
Sam, tell us a bit about your work. Try and wrap in the high order question, and then at the same time, let's lead off with, how do you talk to people who are different to you? How does that happen? How do we build a bridge in our mind and then find the language to be able to do that?
I think they're all really good questions, and I think, at least I hope I'm going to try and answer them all at once. So as a researcher and as someone who works with teachers, teaching teachers who are already teachers, teaching people who are learning to be teachers, I think the highest order of thinking I encourage in my students is to ask good questions and to find something new. I think there's a really coming up with a question and then rethinking that question to ask an even better question is probably the highest order thinking you can do. I do that when I design a research project. What do we want to find out? Or maybe, no, we want to find this out. But I ask teachers to do that about their teaching as well. So, you know, what's working, what's not working, they're very lower order questions, but like, how can I innovate on, or what if I apply, they're kind of higher order questions. And I think how we communicate with people who are different to us. I have to communicate research with people who aren't researchers all the time. And I think one of the things to do is to know a little bit about yourself and a little bit about who you're talking to, what they think's important, and then trying to pick out those really important things clearly for them.
Pauline, tell us about your world and what you spend your time working, thinking about. And I'd love you to wrap on this idea of knowing yourself. Where the heck do we start when we want to know ourselves? Like, where's the first place that we start? Is there a rule book? Is there, you know, a set of tips I can follow if I want to know myself?
Thank you for these vertiginous questions, Jack. So just a bit of background. I'm connecting to all of you from India, Kolkata, on the eastern side of the country, and I come from France. So I moved to Kolkata a couple of years back, and I would say that what makes me think of the highest order of thinking is trying to wrap up our minds around the complexity of human nature, the complexity of human brains and human neuroscience in a way, while remaining always surprised of the differences and the uniqueness of each of us. So we're trying to find some rules that we can scale up to all human beings. We're trying to intellectualize all of that. But I'm always surprised, especially in an international, intercultural context, always surprised to find out things on a daily basis that I didn't know, providing that I dare to go and meet and talk and go deeper into other personalities beyond myself. And to answer your question, Jack, on how to get to know oneself, I think it starts with daring new things, daring to learn new things, putting yourself out of your comfort zone if you can on a daily basis, because otherwise you will never get to know something new about yourself if you don't confront yourself to new elements and inputs from your surrounding and your world. And the world is very vast.
Kalani, how do you know when something is good or bad? When you're making a decision to act or behave in a certain way, how do you know whether it is the right or wrong thing to do, whether it's good or bad?
It's a gut feeling. I think for a lot of people, it's a gut feeling. Generally, I'm a very analytical person. I'll weigh up the pros and cons, especially if it's a bigger decision. But a lot of the time, it's just how I feel. Especially, you know, I'm looking to go to universities at the end of the year, and I looked into some of the courses that I was going to go for. But when I went to the campuses, I just had a gut feeling about one university that I really liked, and that was the motivating factor for me wanting to apply there.
What is a university? Open question to the panel. What does a university experience do for us? What's a university meant to be? Where were universities founded? I'd love to learn more about this idea called university.
So if I can take that and just open it up to the other panelists. I got to dive into the topic of universities in India back in the time, ancient India, where actually India was the worldwide pole for university and education, with their gurus, and universities back then were already all over the country when they were not at all anywhere else in the world. And when you go back to that definition of university back in India, you had university that were completely outdoors, with one teacher that had a lot of knowledge, interdisciplinary knowledge to impart. He or she were both, mathematicians and poets at the same time. So I think university is whatever place where learning is imparted, and over time, through history, we have gone through different formats of universities.
I think I'd like to add to that I think that's, for me, that is something that is really important about university, is it's an opportunity. I think of it as not only a place, but a mindset. It's an opportunity to be a lifelong learner, to really think about ways that you're growing and moving outside of your comfort zone. And so it embodies a place, but it also embodies that mindset.
Yeah, I'll build on that. So I work a lot with students about coming from high school to uni and whether they want to come and why. One of the things we talk about is it's sort of one of these really special places where lots of different thinkers and different ideas and different disciplines sort of coalesce, and you kind of put yourself in the middle of it. And even if you don't know what you want to do when you get there, you have an opportunity to learn really diverse things and find yourself a little bit and find your passions, and then hone that as you go. You don't have to have things all sorted before you start. So for me, there can be very big bureaucracies. From a student perspective, one would hope that personal growth and personal learning times, and deep knowledge learning times too. Do some deep dives that you don't get to do in school.
And I think it gives you an opportunity. It's a bit of a safe space to take risks, right? So you have those opportunities, I think, to do those deep dives.
I'm fascinated by the idea of a university and the framework, and I think that idea of like a higher order thinking is really the work we've been trying to do with kids, and I suppose we've been doing for 16 years. And I've often thought of a 12-year-old or a 5-year-old. I'm lucky enough to have a 2-year-old daughter. There's rich, complex insight, inspiration, wisdom from all human beings. And then that's just scratching the surface. Like yesterday, we had an interview with a lady named Amy Vitale, who's a National Geographic photographer, who captured photos of the last white rhino and the last male white rhino. And we're talking about, the phenomenal skill sets of elephants to move in and out of and be nature's architects, to pull down trees, to be able to open up waterways. And then there's trees behind Kalani, which have all of these amazing networks underneath called mycelium, which are the thread lines in mushrooms, which then actually help the trees talk to each other. So that tree over there can then talk to another tree and be like, hey, you're taking a bit too much of my sunlight. And then they work together through mycelium, which is just ballistic. So there's all these things we can learn from. And part of what we're interested in doing is breaking down, taking the doors off its hinges, which have left people out of that world of higher order thinking. And, there's 3% of young people, 3% of people in the continent of Africa get the chance to go to university and to experience that higher order thinking. Now, that's one framework. I would say that there's spirituality, there's a connection to the ocean, there's sport, there's meditation, there's art, there's being a baby. All of these things give us a chance to have higher order thinking. And so we're going to play with an idea next year and see if we can open our own university, which is an experience which fuses some of the things that you're all talking about. Pauline talking about this idea of being outdoor, being together, exploring different ideas, and Meredith, that it's a mindset. Like, I think if you can gift to people a mindset, and I don't know, it'd be an interesting experiment. I don't know if a 5-year-old is ready for that. Maybe they are, maybe a 95-year-old and a 5-year-old, and that interweb of complexity and diversity could crack open some of the the ideas that we desperately need to solve the problems of our time. So yeah, we're going to have a crack at a university experience with our own take on it, do it for 7 days digitally, and then set people a bunch of assignments to get out and be change organisers in the world, and do training for teachers, do training for university students, do training for high school students and primary school kids as well. So that's the big idea we're working on, that we imagine in the next 10 years that we've founded maybe the next evolution of what a university experience can look like in complementing what's already around. Would you come to that, Kalani?
Absolutely. I think as well as going through university.
Well, I encourage you to put an application in. We'll consider it. So yeah, do your hard work.
I'll give it a shot. But I as well as that, I think with university is coming from somebody who is in high school, but spends a lot of time around universities through AIM and sport and other ways, that you often find that the people that go to university they find what they like in high school, usually in 10, 11, and 12, and then they specifically choose it based on high school. And I think that's just where you're getting narrower and narrower about the way on things that you like and things that you want to operate with, and different things you want to learn. For me, I love public speaking. So when I went to university, I want to do a degree that goes and helps me with that.
And the cool part is, like, it's being curious. If you foster a mind of curiosity, like Meredith said, that mindset of inquiry, you can find new things. I went back to my old high school on Friday. I started painting in the last 3 years to try and stay sane. And I've resisted painting because my mum's has spent her life as an artist and been quite successful. So I did sport as my paradigm from being conscious through to maybe 30. And I went back to a school and donated a painting, and the art teacher was like, "Oh, do you remember these art rooms fondly?" I was sort of, no, I was kicked out of them most of the time and had no connection to art as a high school kid. But now I'm working as an artist in conjunction to the work that I'm doing, probably spending more time in the artist mindset as a 35-year-old than any other field in my life. I think what we want to try and give ourselves as freedom to do is to stay curious and to follow your nose on things, to be able to go back, to pick up lessons and trails that have been left behind us and go, what does that mean? And then to follow your nose after that. What is the most profound lesson that our panel has learned in their entire life?
Do you mean generally or about learning? Well, I'm just
asking the questions.
Oh, okay. I think the biggest lesson I've learned in my life is to trust kids and young people. I think they're profoundly underestimated, and when you give them trust, they always lead you as an educator the right way to help them.
I think it might sound a bit out of topic, but that's the thing I thought about. One may wonder, the one question that a lot of people wonder is, what's the point of life? What is, at the end of the day, why should we care about? What should we care about? What is the most important? What is the ultimate goal of being on this planet? And I've realized that, you may rumble about your past. This is not really useful. You may think about your future. This is not really useful either. Maybe the best thing that you can do and what life is about is to stay in the day and make sure that you're kind and smiling and benevolent no matter the circumstances around you.
That's really profound, I think.
That was the question. Who called for it?
I'm not quite sure how to follow that up, except that I think for me, the biggest lesson that I've learned in life is there's always something else to learn, and there's always something else to be curious about. And that's what makes life so exciting. To always be learning is where I would go with that.
I found out last night on Always Learning that in 5 billion years time, so here's a learning. I'm going to test the knowledge, and I could definitely be wrong. But let's say it's roughly 5 billion years time. The sun is going to envelop the earth and eat the earth, and it's all going to be done anyway. So I think there's this amazing piece where you're like, wow, and for some reason that made me feel lighter. I was like, oh, okay, there's still struggle and we still got to work hard, but eventually the sun's going to eat the earth. Like, and that's, no one's stopping that. The sun is just growing and growing and growing and growing, and the sun's going to eat the earth. And yeah, I think knowing the impermanence of life and then still trying to strive for making the permanent moments as special as possible, and those fleeting moments of permanence that we get. Hey, very quickly before we wrap up the conversation, I'd love to whip around to everybody who's on the show today. 3 things that make a classroom magic.
Positive relationships. That's my first one. Can I think about the others while someone else talks?
I'll throw another one out there. I think creativity.
Mine would be, being in that room where people, be it the guide or called the teacher today, or the students, dare to be someone else than they are outside of the classroom.
Yeah, I think bravery is one. I think classrooms can be very fearful places. So if you are willing to take risks as learners, I think that makes a magical classroom. So,
and empowering others.
Sorry?
Yeah. Empowering others to do the same.
Yeah. And having, I suppose, ethical drive to kind of learn things that will make the world good, that helps you understand the world better and helps you leave the world a bit better than you found it.
Kalani, bring us home. Your 3 things that make a classroom magic.
I think communication. Communication is one of them. I touched on this earlier, but I do genuinely think that if we're able to have a conversation with, somebody that is in a position of power, and this is something that I've worked on with other younger leaders in my school, is that, if you're a leader at the school, you're the person that people look up to mentor them. So if you can sit down and have a conversation as a one-on-one, then that means that you have created a connection that isn't just, oh, that person's up there on a pedestal. It's a personal connection that means that you'll be able to grow that, and you'll be able to get a bigger voice, especially, in school. Not everybody's voice is heard. So if you can have that connection with one person, that one person goes back to their group and makes a connection with all those other people, and then you build this network of connections to grow upon and to help build.
So your assignment in your public speaking communication quest is to go and research mycelium networks and work out how you can take lessons from mycelium into the way you communicate to teachers and students and pass it on. So there's your homework.
All right, I'll take it on. I'll do it.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. We'd love to catch up outside of the show and talk about this university that we're looking at, IMAGI-NATION University, for next year, and see how we could work together to give teachers a chance and work in parallel with a bunch of other organisations around the world. I think 2020 is going to prove to be one of the more complex years in human history, and we're looking to start 2021 with a bang on the 1st of January and see if we can come together and imagine a new way and give out some degrees in imagination and organising change and get out there and get to work and build this world that we're all dreaming of before the sun comes and envelops us all. Thanks, everyone. We're going to go watch Cogs, and that'll wrap up IMAGI-NATION TV today. Thanks a lot, Sam, Meredith, and Pauline, for joining us, and Kalani, thanks for hosting.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Kalani.
ticking clock to cure away. Every second means a mile. Every minute means a day. I hope you're walking in the sun. Hope you're going to be someone. always dreamed that one day I would find you on my way. Maybe one day, maybe today.